All right. Well, let's go to Oval and 94 Disconnect. In the opening montage, you're going to hear all 24 minutes of Do While, and then you're going to hear cross-selling now in the open. Okay, Matt, where are the stats on Oval?
94 Disconnect, is that what it is? I said Discont.
Discont. It is Discont. Sorry.
Discont. Okay. Maybe that's how you pronounced it. I don't know, but whatever.
No, you're right.
94 Discont by Oval comes in at number 449 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 52 in 1995, number 2,506 of all time. It is Oval's highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. It did not make Rolling Stone's list, and Oval is ranked number 1,719 of overall artist rankings.
Okay, well, this album was released at some point in 1995. There's no firm date. They are a German electronic music group formed in 1991 by Markus Popp, Sebastian Oschatz, Frank Metzger, and Holger Lindmüller. Oval has been the solo venture of Markus Popp since 1995 after the other members left. So pretty much like this album, I think, and onward. They have 10 studio, or he has 10 studio albums, and this is the fourth. Genres include, we got some good genres here this week, guys. Glitch, experimental techno, IDM, which you recall as intelligent dance music, ambient techno, and micro sound.
As we mentioned before, as opposed to dumb fuck dance music, which is the corollary.
Micro
Glitch?
sound was, glitch and micro sound subgenres here. Similar artists, well, I don't know. Autechre, I guess. Music, and a bunch of other artists I never heard of. I didn't want to like discount the other artists, but I didn't even know who to pick. There's like so many, and I was like, who is the most famous of these? I don't know. Followed by the Notwist, Vert, and Tortoise were the ones that were also like them. There's no Billboard
I could see Radiohead liking these guys too.
Oh, that's a good point.
Well, considering that Glitch is it's considered, well, we'll talk about it in my review,
Okay.
but it'll apply to Radiohead, Matt.
Yeah, so some fun facts about this band. This group pioneered glitch music by physically damaging the surface of CDs with X-Acto knives or felt pens or tape, and then reconstituting the sounds that were made into loops and recording the skips and kind of the effects of their distortion. 94 Discont was released as a companion piece to Oval's previous album, Systemisch. This album's centerpiece is Do While, which is a 24-minute track, originally composed for the group's 8-channel, 128-speaker modular sound installation named Wonten, which translates into home tone, and a stereo mix sound. The installation was shown throughout Europe between 94 and 96, ranging from art exhibitions to techno raves. So the point being, guys, I bring that up is because they are like true like art music, like installation type of avant-garde experimental music. In March 2013, Oval released a 16-track album called Kaleidostopia, a project which was funded by the Goethe Institute, which is a nonprofit German cultural association, and the Cultural Foundation of the state of Bahia, which is the 5th largest state in Brazil by area, which I had to look up. And their latest album was in 2023, Romantique. It stemmed from Markus Popp's audiovisual collaboration with artist Robert Seidel for the opening of Frankfurt's German Romantic Museum and romantic poetry and music and all of that stuff. So truly like a combination of a crossover between like art and experimentation. So we've listened to some challenging and avant-garde music before. What did you guys think of Oval and 94 Discont? Let's start with Matt.
Yeah. I'm usually down with like electronic and ambient music, even though it's not my go-to or favorite, but I generally really, there's definitely a place for it, I think, in my record collection. And I thought it started off pretty promising. The beginning of Do While, kind of sets the tone a little bit. It's got this, it's had a cool little vibe going on. And I was waiting for like a drum beat to kick in. I was waiting for some variation, something different to happen. And it does, right? 12 minutes into the song, it does. And it only does it at that time for like a minute, and it becomes even more minimalistic than what it started with, right? So it's not even like it went into this direction where it got a beat going or whatever, and then it just kind of goes back into it. So this was a tough one for me. This one, it wore out its welcome fairly quickly. And by the first time I listened to it, I kind of just had it on in the kitchen as I was like kind of putzing around doing some stuff, trying to, like, all right. And then the second time I listened to it was this morning in my car. And like halfway through, I had to turn it off. Like because what happens is later on, now you're getting into, and that it makes sense to what you're saying, that they are taking X-Acto knives and chopping up basically CDs and putting skips and all these kind of like sounds, this like crackling sound, or this somewhat abrasive sound that's just kind of that's repetitive, but it's not really being grounded in any of the two things that I really need for a lot of times, and that's either a melody or a beat. And I really struggled to find either one of them. I thought of Radiohead for sure, because there's elements of like there's parts of these songs that I think would be cool, for a brief period of time in a more electronic or like Radiohead type song that's kind of like this experimental thing. But when you're just stripping it down to its bare bones to what this is, when it's a sole focus, it's really hard for me to grasp onto it or to want to listen to it for 50 minutes. What is this? What is this album? 50, right? Yeah. And so, it was a tough thing for me to do, and I couldn't. Yeah, I think I was listening the beginning of Cross Selling, like the fourth song, and I was just like, all right, I'm done. Like, I just let me listen to Elliott Smith again. Like, I was getting angry is kind of what it was happening, and I didn't want to do that. So it's another one of those probably albums that I'm sure, like, I'm seeing AllMusic gave it 5 stars, right? And I'm sure that there's some aspects of this in terms of the production, in terms of the of how they made the music and what it meant, to future artists and stuff like that. It's wonderful. I'm all for that. I've always said that. But this, for me, it did very little, even for like an ambient. I'm okay with ambient music that kind of sits with something for a while and kind of just plays out, right? That we've covered plenty of those albums already. But this one it really fell flat for me, and I really struggled to grasp onto anything that was of interest to me. So gotta go thumbs down. This is like one of my least favorite records that we've covered this decade, unfortunately.
Yeah, as a concept, I thought this was pretty interesting, the whole idea of glitch music, because I like when guitar players, for example, play around with feedback or noise box, just different stuff like alternate tunings and stuff. And I feel like from electronic music or even ambient music, this is sort of akin to what that is. So as a concept, I was on board with this. And like you said, Matt, there were certain things like cross-selling and store check that had things that were somewhat interesting to me, because you kind of had to conceptualize what the piece of music sounded like. Yeah. Without the glitches or the distortions, to get a feel of what that is. And then you have to know that in order to like process how the glitches play into it. So as a thought exercise, because I mean, it was obvious the first time I listened to this album, it's like, okay, this is an art rock album. You know what I mean? This is experimental. So I'm not listening to this from the standpoint of like necessarily aesthetic enjoyment. It's more like, what are they trying to do here? Which I am proud of myself for growing as we've listened to harder music, to like having a space for that. It's a hard listen if you're not looking at it that way. Like you said, Matt, there's absolutely nowhere where you could put this on like casually, right? like a song like Commerce Server, I never got there. It just, that song like actively trolled my ears, I'd say. It just was not an appealing sound anytime I listened to it. The monotony of Do While after a while started to wear me down a little bit too. And then to like bring it back at the end for an additional 450, I thought was redundant to say the very least. But like with that being said, as much as I didn't necessarily enjoy this album, I definitely could see how, as a foundational piece, it could be interesting in a lot of different venues that aren't necessarily this one, right? To listen to it. Like you said, Matt, somewhere an experimental or art rock band takes pieces of this and builds it into a larger composition, or does a song, right, that stays in this space. But as a 50-minute piece of music, it is extremely difficult. It definitely has that feel like a poltergeist is going to show up, or like something's going to come out of your computer. You know what I mean? Like just some sort, like there's like a spiritual enemy is coming. Like the glitches definitely feel like, you know, some sort of like supernatural energy. Yeah, Ghost of the Machine's a great term for that, Josh. Like, like there were different times where I was like listening to it in spaces, and I'm like, is this the album, or is this like something that's happening in my space where like some sort of physics related energy is going to come to place? Or did suddenly the supermarket checkout machine go nuts, or my video game, you know, suddenly, you know, start to have a like demon in it? So there's that feel to it as well.
Yeah, the Nintendo broke.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if I can't recommend it, but if you like sound and you like recording of sound, well, the more like how stuff sounds. That's where, when we talk about like, you know, Brian Eno's like Airport album, for example, like you can't talk about it like pop music, right? You're talking about it as sound, right? Like, and if you're interested in the concept of recorded sound and what stuff sounds like if you mess around stuff, which I think is kind of what this is going for, right? Like experiments with sound. It is an interesting experiment with sound. I just wish it had been more like a 25 to 30 minute experiment, because I think I would have gotten more out of it, I'd say. And I would have liked something like you know, like a Wire approach where you did like 18 different like 2.5 minute explorations of this, because I think within that there'd be a fair amount of things that'd be like, ooh, that's an interesting way of deconstructing that piece of music. But instead it was more laser focused on a few tracks, which I for me didn't work as well.
Yeah, you made some good points. I agree. There is something. I didn't find it as like abrasive or like difficult to listen to as some of the other stuff that we've listened to. I do find it is monotonous, and there is only subtle changes from within songs, and that does it no favors. I think the songs, if you can call them that, you know, work far better in the 3 to 4 minute range than than like the 24-minute opus that is Do While, or even like 6 minutes with cross-selling. Yeah, it does wear on you. I find that the tracks do sound different from track to track. It's not like all the same thing. You can definitely tell there's, you know, differences in tone or you know, construction is different, the repetition's different. And also too, I think the titles of the songs kind of, I found myself associating the music with the title. So like Commerce Server, I was like, this does sound like busy, like traffic, or like commerce like happening or something. So there was something there for that.
Yeah, I agree, Josh. I was able to get like a visual picture of like a soundscape of a concept. Yeah,
or like if you imagine like some sort of like computer model of like traffic going through intersections, like in fast forward, or like people running through intersections, like they when they do. Have you guys ever seen that movie Koyaanisqatsi with the Philip Glass score? Anyway, it's like different naturescapes and like cities and stuff, and contrasting that with music. And I kind of got that vibe at times listening to this. So, but I agree with you guys both. This was tough. I found the ambient part actually worked in its favor for me. I wasn't like focusing on it completely while doing other things, and I found that worked better. So in that aspect, I think it's successful, but it's not. It is true computer music. It's like our AI overlords, like this is their pop music or something, and I don't know, like I'd be interested to know if when we post this in the YouTube, like people that get like what emotions like this strikes up in people who like this type of music, or like what they get out of it. Like I'd be interested to know that. So yeah, it's a thumbs down for me, but it wasn't as challenging as something like the KLF album from a while back. That was kind of similar.
Oh, I like that
ways.
Way better than this.
Yeah, see, I found this better than that. I found something about I don't know, maybe I'm just more of a computer head or something.
Yeah.
I'm in the Matrix. And
I kind of have to say, like, it's hard for me to thumbs up and thumbs down this, because I feel that like they're not making this music necessarily for like what's the aesthetic opinion of it, right? It's more like it's art, right? And it's sort of like, are you moved by the art, or are you not moved? Are you interested by the art? So like any of these pieces that like I immediately identify, and the KLF was one of them like that. The Residents come to mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trout Mask Replica back in the day. Some of the Krautrock, the Eno Airports album. There's just different stuff we've covered that's this. And I now am able to recognize it immediately. And then I kind of go into like academic John mode, not pop critic John mode. And so for me, it's like, it's almost silly to give thumbs up or thumbs down. It's more like, how did I process this art? As opposed to, did I like this or not?
Right.
Because the point doesn't seem to be like it, because you're not making this to sell albums or move hearts and minds. You're more, exploring it from a different venue. So like when they say like thumbs up or thumbs down, it's like it's a useless exercise. Yeah.
I get all that, but at the end of the day, it is an album. Right. Yeah. And like, yeah. And yes, in some ways you got to kind of put it in a little bit of a different filing cabinet than most of the other stuff that you're listening to, but it is an album. And like, I generally listen to music because I like to hear them. It's a pleasant sound, right?
But it's also like some people are like, it's an exploration of sound and what interests me. And maybe this goes to like the Sonic Youth, part of me, right? Where like Thurston Moore's like, I like to pick up things that are like interesting guitar sounds, and I like to listen to them and figure out how did they make them and what are other ways to make that type of sound, because that's interesting noise. He wasn't like, oh my gosh, dude, like the guitar orchestra that was there, like this just moves me, like, and his book, right? He talks about that, right? I'm just using him as an example. He talks about like how much he loved fucking the Beatles and Kiss and shit, and they like spoke to his youth soul, and he's like, and I listened to these really fucking challenging guitar albums because I was like, how did they make that sound? And like it was like reading a like how-to book, like that opened my mind up. So like I get what you're saying, Matt, but I think they look at you and go, well, yeah, we didn't make this album for you, so just don't buy it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And by no means does anybody ever have to make an album always for me, right? Like that's just not part of the deal. And like I like experimental stuff, and there's some of like the Beatles when they, or like I'm thinking of when they. But for I Feel Fine, when they started off with feedback, right? That was a sound. Lennon loved sounds, right? So, but and there's plenty of other art. Tom York loves sounds, right? I'm sure he would really eat this kind of thing up. Yeah. But if I'm going to listen to something, put something else around it. Like, yes, use that, but if that's your only thing, it's just going to be a difficult thing for me. And yeah, I can say it's a thumbs down, but you're right. At the same time, it is a different experience, and that's not what, and they're not going for a traditional album. Clearly.
I'm not judging you for that, by the way. I'm just more laughing because I'm like, I I changed the paradigm of how there's like how I evaluate most albums, and then there's like how I evaluate these albums.
And that's maybe that's something to shoot for, because maybe that changes the way I listen to it. But yeah, man, I was in the car today, I think, and I was just like, I can't do it. I can't. It's like I can't do this right now. So
well, the car is the wrong. Like I said, once I get to academic brain, I'm like, all right, let me. Yeah, it's just I don't know. That's for me. Context is so important for me of when I listen to albums. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you can like solely just listen to this album and focus on it. I don't know if that's by design either. Like, it does seem appropriate for like an art museum or something while you're walking around looking at other stuff, or like some other sort of like wing or exhibit. I don't think it's designed. I mean, it's stripped down too much. It's like the essence of boops and beeps or something. It's like binary code. Anyway, interesting stuff.